It's the hands.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's like, I know there's.
What's your evaluation so far?
Something like.
Because they're visual or because of the way in which they are banded together?
banded together.
Like just that random PC stuff.
This is where I'm sitting right now, and that's my scale. I mean, I can get up.
You know, like
So, are you adjusting your time clock? Go back?
I know, right?
I think I found the money on something, but add a wire to it.
It is.
I found the money on some of the right ones, but I kind of like go to this like something like make sure that it makes sense.
There is actually a store that does like all sorts of random electronic parts.
I would guess so.
Trying to remember what it is. I figured out this years ago. I went there for a stint or two.
And they had what you needed. They were able to help you out.
They've got some over there sometimes. Let's see if I can track it down.
And they did a place that comes down to companies there. But not like here now. So they found it was statements. Yeah, and they did not.
I mean, everyone's biased.
Yeah,
Right now, I'm checked in section.
Surprise me.
Yeah, it's very very
So on behalf of the Reinelt family, we want to thank all of you here and those of you who are joining via live stream for coming to celebrate Herb's life. And what a life it was. In the 94 years that Dad was alive on this earth, he lived and loved fully in ways we continue to discover as we read through some of his writings and letters. One thing that stood out for me is how deeply our dad cared about living a meaningful and moral life in community with others. He knew in his heart that our personal well-being is inextricably connected to the well-being of others. And he manifested this to the best of his ability in how he lived his life. I wanted to share a few of his own words from a talk he once gave when he accepted an award for an outstanding teacher. This is what he said: "I believe we are called upon to love each other. I mean by that to affirm the reality of each other, to see the other's good, to live for their good and not just our own. We are not isolated individuals here. You and I inevitably belong to each other, are engaged with each other, and who we are shapes the character of the institutions of which we are a part. If we come here to take from the community and not to give to it, then it will have a certain character, a character which none of us would find desirable. On the other hand, no one of us comes merely to give. We all desire to find a part of the meaning of our lives in some fashion in this place for the time that we are here. So we are bound together in a giving and receiving community. Our dad has felt a sense of belonging to and responsibility for many communities over his lifetime. These have nurtured and sustained him, challenged him and helped him grow, and given his life purpose and meaning. He gave and received much from faith communities, from the church youth group he participated in during high school and college, to the small church he pastored in Centerbrook, Connecticut, to his many years as a member, occasional preacher, and supporter of the First Congregational Church of Stockton and the Burton Church on Vashon. And of course, he gave and received a tremendous amount from the university community where he spent 37 years teaching, the University of the Pacific. His family was also a community, woven through marriages, births, adoptions, and friendship. He loved, listened, and valued everyone for who they were, never leaving or letting anyone go. In these last 7 years, he especially valued being part of the Horizon House community. He spoke often about the people he met, the groups he was part of, and the joy he felt making people smile on the elevator, or playfully teasing someone he saw in the hall or dining room, Mary especially. We as a family have also experienced the love and care of the Horizon House community over the past 2 months. So many of you reached out, sent cards, came by to visit with us, and shared what Herb meant to you. And we want to express our deepest gratitude to the staff and residents for all your care and what you shared with our father and with us. We will be forever grateful.
Our dad has always loved Christmas and singing. He recalled the wonder of Christmas at his elementary school when the classroom doors were opened and the junior and senior high choirs would move around the building singing at the end of the halls. He said, the sound of their singing resonated in the hallways and into the classroom, spreading a sense of wonder and beauty that deeply affected me. He especially loved all the lights at Christmas. Lights on trees, lights on houses, lights in stores, and lights around his window at Horizon House. Every year when he came to visit us for Thanksgiving, we would put up and decorate the tree before he left and drive around the neighborhoods looking at the lights and displays. The Christmas displays in the store windows in the store windows at Bon Marché and Frederick and Nelson were favorites when he was a child. He never understood why his grandchildren did not get up very early on Christmas morning to get at the presents, as he had done when he was a child. He also loved singing from an early age. His elementary school teacher thought he had a good soprano voice and encouraged him to audition for the Seattle Gregorian Choir. He enjoyed singing both religious and secular songs with this boys' choirs as they sang at venues throughout the city. He also sang in both the junior and senior choirs at his high school and at the University Congregational Church. Singing songs in the car on road trips, such as Down by the Old Mill Stream and This Land is Your Land, was a favorite memory of our childhood. A few days before Dad died, many children and grandchildren gathered around his bed and sang many of our old road trip songs. When we could get him to sing Susanna's a Funny Old Man with snorts, whistles, and other sound effects, it was a highlight for both his children and grandchildren. Dad also loved church music, including both anthems and hymns, and said that it had the feeling of being profound, deep, and uplifting in the sacred space of the church. It also conveyed the sense of people united in celebration, wonder, and trust. One of his last wishes was for us to be singing to him as he died. When we began singing hymns and other songs to him about 30 minutes before he took his last breath, we didn't even know whether he was close to death or not. We were glad we fulfilled his wish.
Our dad also had a strong love of nature. I truly believe that being in nature is one of the most important parts of our lives, and it was true for Herb as well. We go to the mountains or the ocean or just out of doors in the woods or near water to commune with nature, engage with nature, and feed our souls. In his partial autobiography, one of the first things he wrote about, which Linda touched on, was his upbringing. His family enjoyed the out of doors, spending vacations at various beach cabins or camping and hiking in the mountains. The out of doors would always be a part of his family life. He became a Cub Scout and later a Boy Scout and an Eagle Scout. And he wrote of camping at Kama Beach, on Camino Island, and Verlat on the South Fork Stillaguamish River. You'll see a picture up here of him fishing on the South Fork Stillaguamish and going to scout camp every summer at Camp Parsons on Hood Canal. He remembers mountain rivers and hikes to the mountain lakes from back in the 1930s and early 40s. And in summer of 1952, he was also a fire watcher at Suntop Mountain Lookout near Mount Rainier for the whole summer. When our family was growing up in California in the 60s and 70s, we often went camping as a family. We would usually go to the beach or towards the Sierra Nevada mountains. Our favorite places to camp at the Pacific Ocean were near Santa Cruz or Bodega Bay, and in the mountains, Pinecrest Lake and Yosemite National Park were two of the family favorites. We would hike, swim, and explore the beauty of the outdoors. One of my earliest memories as a family, circa 1964, I think I was about 5 years old, was hiking up to Vernal Falls and the Mist Trail area in Yosemite. And another vivid memory was a family trip to the Canadian Rockies and the Columbia Ice Field in Alberta, Canada in 1966, where we went onto the ice field and got to see a glacier up close and peer down into the depths of crevasses. Herb also loved fishing and taught us to fish when we were young. My strongest memories of fishing growing up were trout fishing near the Truckee River, on Lookout Creek and Little Last Chance Creek. I always loved that name, where we would go with other families. And I always considered him to be a master fisherman because he could catch fish even when others did not. And his favorite fishing buddy and adventurer was Carl Wolfman, a colleague and fellow professor at the University of the Pacific. And they had many wonderful excursions together, fishing and otherwise. They were truly explorers. And then with the next generation, national parks, cabin excursions to Arnold. And that's a cabin where Herb and Margaret had a cabin in Arnold. And on family vacations, we continued that tradition with the grandchildren. 3-generation trips to many of the national parks, including Yellowstone and the Grand Tetons, the Olympics, and just last year to Glacier National Park, where there were 25 of us. And you'll also see a picture up here of all of us last year at Glacier National Park. I'm grateful for how Dad helped nourish a love of nature in all of us. I want to end with some of John Muir's quotes on nature, often considered the father of Yosemite National Park, the father of the Sierra Club. And he said, "In every walk with nature, one receives far more than he seeks. Nature's peace will flow into you as sunshine into trees. Keep close to nature's heart and break clear away, arrive once in a while and climb a mountain or spend a week in the woods. Wash your spirit clean." These quotes are reflective of how I think Herb viewed nature and its importance in his life. Hike on, Dad.
So in the last couple of weeks, I've been writing about my sense of my father as a person and thinking and asking questions and reading some of the same readings that Claire was talking about. So my thoughts, my father was not a great man in the sense of worldly accomplishments. He sometimes felt inadequate about his intellectual contributions in the scholarly world. But he was something more important. He was a good person. Good in the sense of how he understood and lived the common good community. And perhaps more importantly, how we and others not here today shared this experience with him. From a young age, I saw how friends talked to him more than other parents, to the outpouring of messages in recent days about how he inspired, touched, and impacted the lives of many with his loving and caring presence, and further expressing that his life was a model or example of living well and gracefully. I've seen how people young and old value their relationship with him. Let me begin with a couple of stories. For his 85th birthday, my sister-in-law put together a photo book, and my children, 3 and 5 at the time, were asked, "Why do you love Grandpa Herb?" And so after talking about how he was funny because he mixes up all his colors, he kept saying his pants are blue and they're brown. My then 3-year-old daughter said, "And I love him because he listens to us." Don't we all listen to her? What makes a 3-year-old recognize something is different? What did she see or feel? Then last week, a friend posted a comment. "The one thing I remember most about your dad was he welcomed us kids, and maybe when we were high school age, in conversation and genuinely listened to us and cared about what we had to say." What makes a person most remember this one thing, literally some 50 years later? So my father rarely discussed his faith unless asked. We were raised morally and not religiously, perhaps unusual for an ordained minister, but not a philosopher. But I've come to believe he lived his understanding of his faith and the central role of love. He believed that we are called upon to love each other, to live for the good, the other's good, and not just our own. His commitment to community, the common good, required him and us, if we are so committed, to feel in our hearts that others are like us and to be able to enter into their perspective and not just see them from our own standpoint. So with his curiosity of an adventurer and a deep desire to learn and a belief that loving and being loved are clues to what life is all about, he listened deeply and genuinely cared. And people experience this in small ways and large, from simply enjoying conversations with him to major impacts on many lives across the decades. Lastly, he shared any insights or wisdom he thought might be useful in the name of greater understanding and the common good. And I've seen this pattern repeat, and I talk to him about it. So while his family was his greatest joy, he was always open and welcoming to new members of its ever-expanding circle. His community extended beyond to friends, students, acquaintances, to people of all beliefs. So in the spirit of the common good and love, listening first requires a certain humility, grace, and kindness. And many people experienced his listening and caring presence as a gift. I find it difficult to argue that anything is more important than spreading love and caring in this world. And he left his corner of the world a better place. So again, with a photo book, my then 3-year-old daughter, in another response to why we love Grandpa Herb, said, he plays with us. Sometimes he needs to take a rest. So he played with us, he laughed with us, he listened to us, he cared for us, he taught and learned with us, he loved with us, he lived his life with us. Now is the time for him to rest. We will miss him, miss his presence. May we see him reflected in ourselves. He is part of who we are. And may we, as his legacy, continue to radiate his loving and caring presence in the world.
I teeter on the brink of endings. This is a poem by Ted Loder, who's a good friend of Herb's from Yale. O God of endings, you promised to be with me always, even to the end of time. Move with me now in these occasions of last things, of shivering vulnerabilities and letting go. Letting go of parents gone, past gone, friends going, old self growing. Letting go of children grown, needs outgrown, prejudices ingrown, illusions overgrown. Letting go of swollen grudges and shrunken loves. Be with me in my end of things, my letting go of dead things, dead ways, dead words, dead self I hold so tightly, defend so blindly, fear losing so frantically. I teeter on the brink of endings, some anticipated, some resisted, some inevitable, some surprising, and most painful. And the mystery of them quiets me to awe. In silence, Lord, I feel now the curious blend of grief and gladness in me over the endings that the ticking and whirling of things brings. And I listen for your leading to help me faithfully move on through the fear of my time to let go, so the timeless may take hold of me.
As many of you will know, I am Janelle, Herb's second wife and the children's adoptive mother. I was also Herb's student at UOP, majoring in philosophy. He was my master teacher and key mentor. I probably loved him from the very first day I met him. And when Barbara died tragically, I was waiting in the wings, so to speak. I recently realized and told him before he died that besides my parents, he was the single most influential person in my life, teaching me not only philosophy, but how to be an adult, how to parent, how to teach, how ethics and politics intertwine. In short, how to live. We were married for 18 years and raised 4 incredible children who have always made both of us so very proud. Herb married Margaret Payne in 1989, and the 3 of us became friends and family to each other. About 15 years later, I married Jerry Hewitt, a colleague of Herb's in the philosophy department. And the 3 of us became close friends and family to each other. Jerry was able to attend Herb's 90th birthday party, but because of his Parkinson's disease, he's unable to be here with me today. Jerry and I probably knew Herb as a teacher and a professor better than anybody. And we want to share with you some of the things that we admired and will always remember. Herb was a splendid teacher. He knew how to listen carefully. You'll hear that listening as a theme across what we all are saying. He knew how to listen carefully to his students and what they were saying, and then help them to rephrase, modify, or reaffirm their grasp of difficult material. He never made anyone feel inadequate or foolish, as some professors do. He was willing to spend time going over the readings or term papers with the students as long as they wished to work on the ideas. Jerry emphasizes that Herb was exceptionally kind to his students. They often brought their personal problems to him for advice and counsel. He married and then christened the children of a good number of them, and he buried a few too. In the 60s and 70s, there was a revolution in our universities that transformed the very meaning of education. Herb was an enthusiastic leader on the UOP campus during those years. Together with like-minded colleagues, he designed a new liberal arts curriculum for his college called the I&I program, Information and Imagination. It featured co-teaching with interdisciplinary topics that were designed by the faculty to interweave science with the arts, humanities, and social sciences. Jerry taught with Herb on several of those courses, introducing students to the same texts I first studied as a freshman at Pacific with Herb. Erich Fromm's Marxist concept of man, and Sigmund Freud's civilization and its discontents. Intellectually, the 3 of us shared many interests and commitments that remained lively and important over more than the 50 years of our relationships. Herb had other leadership abilities as well. He was the head of the faculty senate for a while. He served on key committees that first developed student evaluations. He agitated for better teaching loads and salaries for UOP's undercompensated professors and many other areas of campus concern. He had strong political and civic commitments as well. In 1964, before I knew him, he chaired the San Joaquin County Coalition on Fair Housing and the elimination of racial discrimination in Stockton. He was always proud of that work. But he was also extremely modest, if not self-deprecating in some regards. I will always remember when he was invited by Bernd Kolker, the provost of Raymond College, to give an annual research lecture for which the faculty chose the speaker. I said, "Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so proud of you." And he told me he turned it down. And I said, "Why?" And he said he didn't think he had anything that important to say and didn't want to disappoint them. Any of you here who have ever heard Herb give a lecture or a sermon know he definitely had a great deal to say, and it was always valuable to those who heard him. Although I did not share Herb's spiritual commitments, I admired greatly the seriousness with which he followed the path of spiritual belief. He was always ready to engage in discussion and debate, something I think the secular humanists here at Horizon House know about especially well. A number of his family members, some children, grandchildren, and me as well, have turned toward Buddhist meditation and practice over the years. And he, a lifelong daily meditator himself in the Christian tradition, was always delighted to discuss our experiences with us or to debate various versions of science versus religion with granddaughters Julia or Kaya. Jerry and I think the integrity, generosity, compassion, and wisdom that Herb exhibited in his daily life was probably the result of a life lived as a serious spiritual quest. I want to close by sharing one last time a blessing that I heard Herb give on many sacred occasions. He gave it at my parents' funerals. He gave it at Margaret's funeral. And I wish to say it for him on the occasion of this celebration of his life. Many of you may recognize it too. And now, may the peace which passeth understanding and the love which will not let us go be with you forever and ever. Amen.
The next thing is missing from the program, and that's a favorite Christian verses, 1 Corinthians 13, and his grandchildren are going to share that one for us.
If I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing.
Love is patient, love is kind, it does not envy, does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres.
Love never fails, but where there are prophecies, they will cease. Where there are tongues, they will be stilled. Where there is knowledge, it will pass away. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part, but when completeness comes, what is in part disappears.
When I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. For now, we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part. Then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. And now these three remain: faith, hope, and love. But the greatest of these is love.
when I think of one word to describe my grandpa, it's similar to the theme that we've been hearing here, and it's present. My earliest memories of my grandpa are being surrounded by my cousins, my aunts and uncles at the cabin. He also always came to visit in Washington, and we would go and visit him in California. We always really looked forward to our visits with our grandpa because he took us to Toys R Us and we got to pick out one toy. He also took us to movies, to pizza. I have exactly one memory of my grandfather getting mad at me, and it was when we went to mini golf. My siblings and I didn't take it very seriously. We started to kick the ball a little closer to the hole. He didn't like that very much. Grandpa took mini golf very seriously. As I grew older, I guess the theme there is that he was always around. He was always really present and active in my childhood. And as I grew older into my adolescence and my teens, the first time I ever took a flight by myself as an unaccompanied minor with my brother, it was when we went to go and visit our grandfather. His next door neighbor had a pool. We did not live in a neighborhood. We grew up on Vashon Island, and I thought the neighborhood was the coolest thing. There was a next door neighbor who would pop up over the fence and come and say hi to us. And I also, my first truly solo flight was to go and visit him when I was a sophomore in high school, and he showed me around various colleges in California. I remember he made dinner for me, and it was the famous meal of a rotisserie chicken and microwaved broccoli. I did not know that's how you could prepare broccoli. He literally took raw broccoli, stuck it on a plate, poured some water on it, and stuck it in the microwave. The various times I went to have dinner with him at his house, from then on, I probably had that meal at least half of the time. The other half was soup. He was at my high school graduation, my college graduation. He was always there. He was always present. As I got older and maybe a little bit deeper, the things that I appreciated about him, my understanding of his ability to be present evolved. We had a lot of conversations about identity, perfectionism, relationships. He listened to me complain about men a lot. We talked about the patriarchy, everything that you could imagine, we discussed, and those conversations ended up being really influential in my life, and he really helped me figure out a lot of ways to live life, and just, yeah, again, it's kind of a similar theme. It was like those conversations made a huge difference for me. I used to then, in the same kind of time frame, write philosophical posts on Facebook, and he would always comment. And I remember one time he wrote, "One day we'll make a philosopher of you." About 10 years ago, a friend of mine passed away on Vashon in a really tragic accident. And as my friends and I from high school, came to gather around that, I decided to stay with my grandpa Herb in those immediate days because of all the conversations I had had with him around difficult themes in life. I thought, who better to talk with about grief than my grandfather? And he really helped me just think about all of the different things surrounding death. And I think that that conversation also opened up that topic for us. And it was something that we pretty freely discussed for the last decade. One of my favorite, more recent memories of my grandfather is I lived in Thailand for a year, about 5 or 6 years ago, and my brother, my dad, and my grandfather all came to visit at the same time. Spent 2 weeks backpacking around Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos. Like truly backpacking. We were, if you know anything about the Reinelt men, they're pretty frugal. And we stayed true to that on that trip. We were on overnight buses, we were on overnight trains, we were in smelly hostels, and he did it all. One motivation, other than seeing his lovely granddaughter, of course, was that one of his bucket list items was to make it to Angkor Wat. And we were able to enjoy that with him. And it was, you know, the hottest time of the year. And we spent days just exploring, and we would often check in on him and say, like, how are you doing? And he would just go, this is marvelous. And he said, you know, when I need to take a rest, I do. When I came home, you know, the conversations continued here at Horizon House. And there was a particular conversation that I remember having maybe a couple of years ago where, again, we talked about death quite a bit. And one thing I remember him telling me, is that, you know, he gave many eulogies over the years, and he really hated it when you only told positive things about a person. So Grandpa, that's why I told the mini golf story. Also, you didn't like cats, and you're wrong. As my dad previously mentioned, we spent a family reunion in Glacier National Park last summer, about almost exactly a year ago, in honor of my Uncle Pete's 60th birthday. And there was a moment where he was sitting on the couch quietly and without really anyone around. And I came and sat down with him, and I just said, how's it going? What are you thinking about? And he said, I just feel so lucky. And he said, this is a really bittersweet time because I just love being with my family. And I know that there's not going to be too many more times when we're all together like this. And I'm really grateful that he felt like he could discuss those things with me. So as my understanding of my grandpa's ability to be present evolved from small things like Toys R Us to deep conversations in the past weeks, it's evolving again. From those conversations, I know that my grandpa believed in some type of ability to communicate after life. I don't think he really knew exactly what that was or what that would look like, but I know that he believed. And so I take comfort in knowing that my grandpa is always present, both in me and I think in all of you.
Grandpa Herb was kind, he was interesting, fun, loving, and wise. I've always admired him, looked up to him, and bragged about him, telling everyone how great and cool my grandfather is. From all the wonderful women he was able to woo, to his interesting choices in career, to his youthful spirit, even into his 90s. He and I had a special relationship, although I bet if I asked most of the people here that they would say the same. And this is because Grandpa took a great interest in the lives of the people he cared about, always asking what they were reading, learning, thinking about, working on. For me, it was usually science. I went through a phase of reading many theoretical physics books, all of which I would share with my grandfather after I was done. He read all of them. Despite my best efforts, was likely the only person in my life who did. He loved to have conversations about these topics with me, and these are some of my most favorite memories. Ultimately, many of these conversations would turn to whether there was a God. As you know, my grandpa was very scientifically minded and was a professor of philosophy of religion and a believer in a higher power. I am and was not. This certainly made for some interesting and passionate discussions. He would say science could not explain how we perceive value or why we find a sunset beautiful. And I would respond with comments on the various physical forces, trillions of neuronal connections, and millennia of evolution. However, arguing with a philosopher as wise and as well-read as my grandfather was never a trivial task. And our conversations would ultimately end in a draw, or maybe not so much a draw, as I simply did not have the intellectual stamina and patience to keep up. Still, these are some of my most treasured memories. We may never have come to an agreement on the source of value in humankind, but one thing I know for sure is that I have an overwhelming feeling of valuing him and being valued by him. And whatever the source and whatever the explanation, those feelings and that connection have always had and will always have a profound impact on my life and my relationship with others. Grandpa, thank you for everything. I love you so much. I'm really gonna miss you. And God or no, I truly feel blessed to have had you in my life.
I get to read some wonderful words from Ina Bray, one of Herb's friends. He had several friends who would come to visit him while he was staying here on hospice. In fact, I could hardly get in there when he was awake because they were with him so often. Herb, you left An emptiness descended on us and on those who basked in your warmth, your wisdom, and your friendship. Your window was perpendicular to mine in the story below, and I could not help but be aware of the changes that you would create. Varying lights, shades, although not your activities. But whenever the window gave off light, it was as if an invisible hand would wave hello. Did you know that you were sending this greeting to me? To me and to the seagulls that swerved in the canyon between these downtown high rises and who occasionally thumped down on our AC boxes. At times, you would notice my nocturnal preambulations, and then the next day you would tease me about them. Remember? You were the star in Warren Anderson's short story classes. We would read an assigned story and discuss it at length, and then, when it seemed that our every brain cell had already been taxed to its limit and nothing more could be said, or so we thought, you would speak up. In your enigmatic way, you would gently add some insight, take us to another point of view, and expand our understanding. And we would smile with quiet appreciation. Oh, how about our poetry sessions with Linda Purdy? Poems that at times you had selected. We interpreted and critiqued them. We reacted to them, laughed at the concepts, perhaps even shed a tear. And then you would dig a bit deeper, or add another layer of meaning, or even change a word or two. And our relationship to the poem became more intimate. What a gift you gave us. Of course, you left your footprints on the Horizon House Library book collection. Once a month, we come together with book recommendations that Judy Klein then prioritizes for possible eventual purchase. And your selected books invariably included one or two that the rest of us would have overlooked. A philosophical yet accessible topic, a historical subject with a psychological bent. A number of your suggested books now smile on the Horizon House library shelves. You never flaunted your erudition, but it was ever present, as was the depth of your character. Lucky the generations of students who sat at your professorial knees, perhaps reminiscent of a scene in ancient Greece. The seated philosopher Socrates or Herb, surrounded by his disciples, discussing, arguing, discovering philosophy, theology, or just life. And then when the time came, these students from long ago or from your time scattered to all four corners of the world as wiser and more fulfilled human beings and shared your Herb Reinelt's wisdom. That was you, Herb. But of course, first and foremost, you belong to your family. You, the treasured, loving, engaged father, grandfather, and even great-grandfather. Nothing made your face light up as much as when you mentioned one of your offsprings, or when you recalled a conversation with one of your grandkids, or when you planned a family visit to a distant part of the country. And oh, Herb, how I will now know when Christmas season starts. How will I know? For years, it was those twinkling, colorful lights around your window, the first of the season that would announce Christmas to me. And so I would know that, all right, it's time for me to reciprocate with the little colored stars in my window, and time to start humming Christmas carols and rejoice in the season of lights and glorious sounds. Who knew so many people did so many strange things in their windows around here? You may be gone to another existence, Herb, but your spirit will not leave us. A spirit that embodied kindness, acceptance, and understanding, and a touch of mischievousness, perhaps. You will continue to be among us, smiling, waving your hand and your presence, and will feel gentle and warm. Rest well, my friend. Rest well, Ina. And now is your time to tell a brief story, if you have one. And we have some family members who will come and get microphones to pass to you so you can be heard. We have about 10 minutes to do this. And the way people speak in the microphones here is like it's a lollipop or it's rather an ice cream cone and you're going to speak right in the top of it. So who has it? Oh, someone's already up. All right. It's on.
It's on. Okay. Okay. So my name is Bill Barker. My name,
right. You almost
my
have to.
name is.
Thank you. You have to eat it.
I have to eat it?
Almost.
Like okay. This. My name is Bill Barker.
There you go.
Okay. I too was once a student of Dr. Reinelt. He told me once that I could call him Herb, but I never got used to that. So to this day, I have trouble calling him Herb. Anyway, I took one class from Dr. Reinelt. It was the spring of my senior year, and it was a philosophy class, obviously. During that semester, my father had a heart attack and ended up having bypass surgery, and I had to reschedule my finals to deal with the surgery. Well, I talked to Dr. Reinelt, and he said, oh, just come talk to me. We'll figure something out. I didn't know what to expect. So I showed up at the appointed day and the appointed time. And we sat in the philosophy lodge in his office and just talked for an hour, hour and a half. And then he said, okay, we're done. And I said, well, what about my final exam? He said, no, you passed. And I am forever grateful for that memory. I'm still processing it because in so many ways, it touched me on so many levels. So that will be one of the lasting memories I have of Herb. And I thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Oh, by the way, yes, I passed. I got an A-.
And I'm either Beth or Elizabeth Davis. And shortly after Herb moved here into Horizon House, we met and began to go down, down to this Starbucks or that Starbucks and sit there and talk and have a lovely time. And it started off, of course, I'm an atheist, he wasn't. So we talked about that, but that got pretty boring pretty quickly. So we talked about this and that and what it was like to grow old. He was just a year older than I am. And we had a lovely, lovely time. And I deeply miss him.
Anyone else? Don't be afraid.
Hi, I'm Bill Comfort. Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. I'm Bill Comfort. I'm one of the preachers here. And but I also facilitate the men's group. And Herb was the stalwart member of the men's group. The men's group that we have here is an extraordinary group where men gather and share all kinds of things, including teasing each other, but also including talking about death, talking about the things that go wrong with our bodies when we get older. We talk about mild cognitive impairment, which is going around, it seems. And but the thing I want to say mostly about Herb is that because of the kind of guy he was, I guess, because of the kind of guy he was one of the people who helped create a space in our men's group that we could, in order to deepen the sharing, so that I mean, there are several guys like that in the group, but Herb was definitely one of them, and it was handy to have him there because we could within his presence, feel the okay to go ahead and talk about something at the bottom of our heart.
Nice. Thank you, Bill. I was Herb's neighbor on the 7th floor, and the memory that I want to share is when I first really paid attention to Herb was at Christmas time, and he put a humongous Christmas stocking on his door. It was the biggest stocking I had ever seen. And I wasn't sure whether that meant he really expected it to be filled or whether he was just super hopeful. So I put a candy cane in it. And we had been friends ever since then. Thank you.
That's great.
I'm Nancy Robinson, and I want to speak for the Secular Humanist Group because Herb was very helpful to us. Secular humanism means you want to be good human beings. And if anybody could help us, it was Herb. And we listened to him faithfully, and I learned so much. I want to thank you.
Hi, I'm Lynn Levine, and we hung out together. Herb and I went to the Chamber of Music jazz concerts down in Veneroy Hall. We subscribed, and so we did things together. But he did something that I really am so grateful for. He when one of his daughters, or one of his children, Claire, came to visit, he said, I think you two would like each other anyhow. He invited me to dinner with Claire and her husband. And we've been friends ever since, and I'm really grateful to you, Herb, for introducing me to Claire. Wonderful. And so thank you so much.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, because people may not know, Herb spent many years on Vashon Island and attended Burton Church, and a number of us are here from Burton Church. And that was a very important part of his life, I think. And I want to say he greatly, after hearing all of his lifetime accomplishments, and I don't know that I would say, they were amazing to hear everybody talk about them, but he came to Burton Church, a very small church, and he was just one of us. And it's inspiring to think about his memory that way and the impact that he had on us. As you can imagine, when he came to Burton Church, he didn't sit in the back of the church and listen quietly, but instead delivered sermons, came to the men's group, came to Kathy's group on, well, a study group. He was an active participant in practically everything Burton Church did. And we're grateful to all of you for sharing with us that time that he had with us. It was just wonderful. And I'll just say one thing, that one of the things I'm in thinking about Herb, I'm thinking how many brief quotes I can remember from him. And one of them was from when he was a child in Seattle, and I was a child in the Seattle area, but some years later, he talked about what his father said to him once, which was his father pointed to an African-American man, well-dressed in Seattle, and his father said, that's basically a good man. But it was said in such a way, he's one of the good ones, and the other ones maybe not so much. And I think that that kind of lesson resonated with her for the rest of his life. And somebody described his activities in Stockton on anti-discrimination efforts. That kind of lesson, I think, was a learning experience for Herb when his own father, who I think he greatly admired in general, spoke something that Herb regarded as not true, and it stayed with him for his entire life. That kind of learning, I think, was an important part of Herb's life and a lesson for all of us.
Thank you, Doug. One last story. Anybody got one?
I think Herb lived as long as he wanted to live. I'm a member of the men's group that
Bill.
That Bill heads. Anyway, we were talking about death, and one of the comments really has stuck with me, and it was made by Herb. Herb stood up and he said, well, I'm 93. He said, and I really don't know how long I want to live. And that told me that he had lived just the number of years he wanted to live.
Wow. Thank you, Norm. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for taking care of the microphones for us. Jean's got a prayer, a blessing that she's going to share next. Good job.
A Blessing for Absence by John O'Donohue. May you know that absence is full of tender presence, and that nothing is ever lost or forgotten. May the absences in your life be full of eternal echo. May you sense around you the secret elsewhere, which holds the presences that you have left your life, that have left your life. May you be generous in your embrace of loss. May the sore of your grief turn into a well of seamless presence. May your compassion reach out to the ones we never hear from, and may you have the courage to speak out for the excluded ones. May you become the gracious and passionate subject of your own life. May you not disrespect your mystery through brittle words or false belonging. May you be embraced by God, in whom dawn and twilight are one, and may your longing inhabit its deepest dreams within the shelter of the great belonging.
Hard to do a benediction after that. And so as you go from here, continue to tell Herb's stories. May the stories that you share today fill your spirits with good memories. May those memories be a comfort to you in the days to come. May you honor Herb with rich laughter as well as your genuine tears. May the conversations and the connections you make today draw you closer as his family and as his friends. May Herb's strong spirit, stories, and connection to you all accompany you in the years ahead. May his enjoyment of family and fun be a daily invitation to each one of us, starting with this celebration. And so as you go from here, be blessed with peace as you grieve, the love of God and the love of Herb, plus much joy and laughter in your own lives. Go in peace.
So just now